Hey, what's going on? This is the OG Kickoff, a Double Down and Next Round media production. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, we had spring football on this weekend. Kind of, sort of, not really. It was more of see what teams tweet out and see what random fans tweet out and just follow the propaganda and do whatever you can to possibly fit your narrative. Not my favorite consumption of spring games, but hey, spring football games were in fact played. So cheers to that. Spring games aren't canceled forever.
I love spring games being a standalone data point that just kind of have a lot of space on either side. You saw the drama around Colorado's team looking 2 feet tall. I love that it's so chock full of information. And again, we need to bring it back. It used to be even more so that you wouldn't be able to really watch practice, like kind of pre-social media or pre-ESPN. Guys didn't really care, like or pre like kind of like massive coverage of college football. It's not like ESPN was sending guys to practice unless there was like a controversy or something. So you would see guys for the first time. Now I'm loving the off the bus, my team is better than your team stuff, because without the portal window stuff, we haven't had as many weird little games that we're playing. I'm all about it, bro.
Over under 12 players on Colorado's team right now that I could either outbench or out squat.
Oh man, I mean that receiver group looks small, man. I feel like you got that dog and you got the old man strength from carrying a baby. I don't know. I mean that was kind of an impressive flex. I'm not gonna lie.
Look, I'm just saying, if Deion needs me, you know where to find me. I ain't hard to find. No, that was a tough look, and I do love the fact that in this curated era of spring football, wherein we'll get to some of the storylines. We got a great pod coming up, by the way. JD PicKell is going to join us. We're going to talk through some spring storylines, some things that kind of came out from these spring games that happened over the weekend in the SEC. We'll dig into all that stuff as well. But I do love that in such a curated era and the most online team in existence, Colorado, that's what they had come out, was just a really tough 6-7 seconds of dudes that looked like they should have still probably been in a high school uniform, and the ultimate nobody is scared of you coming off the bus team. Not the best look.
After losing Jordan Seaton, just this absolute walrus of a man. Just like, hey guys, we're just gonna go 7-on-7 this year. No lines, just vibes.
Yeah. Better offensive coordinator situation there. Don't know that Julian Lewis is going to get the help. You didn't come here for an in-depth breakdown of Colorado. You just got one. All right.
Dang it. Deion's done it again. He's got us talking about it again.
He is. So, yes, great show coming up. Like I said, that interview with JD PicKell. And we have something that we'll get to after Lad of the Week with an email that I want to be able to close with. But first, Will, we have a non-quarterback Heisman draft that we are going to do right here, right now, because I realized we missed our draft window that we usually do for every month in the offseason. So for those of us who just started listening to us with the transition to the Next Round Double Down Media, we do a draft on the first Tuesday of every month. And we pushed that back this month because of when our announcement came. But we were still, hopefully going to be able to fit it in before the actual draft. And this was, an opportunity that we basically started doing these last year. No, 2 years ago, we started doing these. And it's really fun because it kind of forces you to think outside of your comfort zone a little bit with some of these teams. And we get into some national stuff, at least when we're not doing drafts of SEC offensive coordinators, which maybe that'll come at a date to be named later. But yeah, this non-QB Heisman draft, it feeds into our friends don't let friends bet on preseason Heisman favorites, evergreen OG rule here. And it's a fun exercise because it just reminds you how hard this award is to win for the non-quarterbacks. And I do think there is a path to do so. But it's really hard. And we're probably going to get a little bit into the weeds, and you'll hear some of these guys be like, yeah, that player's really good, but are they going to be the player that's crying in front of a national audience in December? Probably not. But, we get into probably 12, 13 guys that we're going to name with this.
Plenty of my team's players were crying in front of a national audience before December. So it's just all about what type of crying you're doing, folks. And yeah, I'm right there with you. It's hard to ever say in this era that a non-quarterback will win the Heisman. So it turns into more of a preview. And that's why I love that we do this, because it turns into kind of who has the best supporting cast. Let's talk about some of the other non-quarterback guys and really get our data up.
I have been Heisman voter since 2022, And so, like, the way that this process works, where you get 3 names on the ballot, you rank them 1 through 3. I have had 4 years of voting, 3 candidates per year. I have put 12 names on a Heisman ballot. Will, how many of them do you think are non-quarterbacks?
Very few. I mean, outside of this year. Oh, but we did have a Travis Hunter year too. That was a really weird year. So I'm going to say non-quarterback. Let's go with a fourth overall.
A 4th overall, so 3. You gave me a fraction instead of a
Yes.
number.
Yes.
4. 4 is the number, the whole number, not the fraction of that. Yeah, so I mean that's 1/3, I guess, in Will terms. It's 1 per year. That's kind of the average. And if you look at the non-quarterbacks who have finished in the top 4 in the Heisman in the 2020s decade, we've had 6 of them, so about 1 per year so far. Whoever that player ends up being always gets a legit late push of like, I think they're the best player in college football, and maybe they should just win the award. You saw it with Jeremiah Love play out last year. Of course, it was different in 2024. You're right, a very weird year wherein I had all 3 of my spots on the Heisman ballot were non-quarterbacks. So never say never to it. And I'm just not as convinced that a QB path is locked in. Hey, this is only going to be about the quarterbacks. And I know, like, for me personally, I don't go into this process with that assumption, even though if you go on FanDuel right now, which maybe some of these odds will be referenced later with this draft, you will see that there are only 2 non-quarterbacks with odds better than 100 to 1. So yeah, it's a long shot. We know that. It's a long shot. I'm not saying this is likely, but fun exercise to do.
And hey, never say never, because like I said, it's almost like Heisman's go in waves where you have like a freaky Heisman and then you have a very standard Heisman. Like last year felt like a very standard Heisman. It felt like, okay, kind of this is what we're doing this year. But the year previous was like, dude, like this could be a year an offensive lineman wins it through like 3 or 4 weeks. It was like, because it was so wide open. And then when you get these wide open ones, to your point, the guys that start the year, this is why we don't let friends bet on preseason Heisman odds. The guys that start off the year are like the worst odds. It's like, because it's really just where the music stops at that point in the year.
Yes, as we mentioned, Fernando Mendoza was 50 to 1 at this time last year. And yeah, you follow this natural progression, and the Heisman arc is something that gets talked about a lot. And maybe these guys that we're talking about today, it's maybe they're too well known, and maybe it's going to be too difficult for them to follow the Heisman arc. But yeah, we did this last year, and well, I think you won. I think you won here. Let me recap how this went last year. You had Jeremiah Love, Ryan Williams, at least that's what he was formerly known as, Ryan Williams, Nick Singleton, Nate Frazier, Dylan Stewart. I had Jeremiah Smith, Desmond Reed, Colin Simmons, Cam Coleman, Jordan Tyson. You won because, I mean, Jeremiah Love finishing 3rd, like getting to New York. That's, I mean,
One invite in here can win you the whole thing. That's the thing. And he was like
yeah.
kind of within striking distance as much as anyone else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jeremiah Smith was 6th and was part of this conversation, but Jeremiah Love definitely had more of the Heisman discussion late in the year. And I'm mad at myself because when we did honorable mention, I had talked about Caleb Downs and I almost picked Caleb Downs. I should have just picked Caleb Downs my last pick instead of Jordan Tyson, because he finishes 9th in the Heisman voting. If I had 2 guys in the top 10, maybe it makes my case a little bit better. But you won. I will definitely say that I took the L on that for sure. Because you won, and because this is a draft and this is how this sets up every single time, Will, I'm going to give you the choice to pick first or second too. What do you want?
I'll go second too. I want to see where your head's at here.
I think that's what I wanted. I think that's what I wanted. Okay. I got a big board here. Let me pull up my big board. Yeah, I'm taking number 1 overall. I'm taking Jeremiah Smith number 1 overall. Okay. Like if that's chalky, then so be it. I am perfectly fine taking the best returning player in college football number 1 overall. I am. And you could tell me that he's going to have all the attention in the world. You could say, why would you take a guy like that? It's going to be different this year. I am slightly worried about him not having Carnell Tate, who was fantastic. Very likely could be the first receiver off the board in the NFL draft, could end up being a top 5 pick. He is that dude. They did bring in Devin McEwen from UTSA. He's going to be really interesting to see kind of how he picks up the slack with the loss of production from Tate. But Jeremiah Smith is an alien playing football. He is an alien. Last year, he's got a first-time play caller in Brian Hartline. He's got a first-time starting quarterback in Julian Sain. All eyes are on him after he tore it up as a true freshman. We've talked about how difficult it is for quarterbacks to manage having NIL deals with private jet companies and all the attention that you receive in this day and age, and how tough it is to be 21, 22 years old with that kind of offseason. And he gets off to the slow start against Texas. He had like 3 drops in that game. And we're like, oh man, maybe this is going to be kind of like a sophomore slump for Jeremiah Smith. All he ends up doing is still leading power conference receivers in receiving. And he finished 6th in the Heisman voting with all of these highlight reel plays. He still was that dude. So this time he's got a year under his belt with Julian Sane. That's good. He's already learned what it's like to deal with all the offseason NIL stuff. He's already learned what it's like to deal with a new play caller. Arthur Smith, you can have questions about him and what he's going to bring to that offense. I don't think that he's going to all of a sudden be like, you know what we're going to do is we're going to use him as a decoy. And Falcon fans, I know you're going to tell me that Bijan Robinson being used as a decoy is the exact reason that Jeremiah Smith is going to be used in the worst way possible. Different with a college receiver as opposed to an NFL running back in Arthur Smith's system. Just a little bit different, in my opinion, but we'll see. This is not a Kyle Pitts situation. That's what I'm saying. He's not Kyle Pitts. He is not that. I mean, I believe Jeremiah Smith when he said to Chris Lowe that he was offered $10 million in the portal, Miami. The catch radius is insane. This isn't someone who's just going to quietly rack up 150 yards in a given day. And remember this too. Last year, Ohio State had this historically great defense. And I kept bringing up, they're not playing in competitive fourth quarters at all. The only competitive fourth quarter that they played in the regular season was against Texas in the opener. And then it wasn't until the Big Ten championship against Indiana where they're like actually having to throw passes in the fourth quarter. So if that happens, he's going to be called upon even more in the fourth quarter instead of just playing in, 60 to 70% of these games. So I don't think it's crazy that he has like 1,500 yard pre-Heisman season. That still feels just like what we saw with Devontae Smith in 2020, where he's just too skilled. And this is a guy who's an all-pro receiver who's being told you have to still be in college football. I think that's all on the table for Jeremiah Smith.
I would say I love post-championship Ryan Day because he's bringing in all these freaky coordinators and being like, and I can win with this guy. But honestly, Chip Kelly is the king of that, and that's who he won with. I don't know, post-hair dye Ryan Day, whatever year you could pick out the last, like right before Chip Kelly was hired.
Will, if I did that do you know how easily you'd be able to tell with the beard? Like you could see the gray coming in right there. Do you know how much you have to use to make it that dark? It's unhealthy.
We were just talking about that off air because I have like blonde streaks in my mustache where it looks like it's like not there actually. And I was looking at that, kind of bemoaning that to you. It's like, I'm not going to go full Ryan Day. And so I don't know which barbershop he went to that gave him this confidence to hire like every coach we've ever made fun of in a row. But I love it. I genuinely love it. Like, I hope he just keeps bringing in random like special teams guys. I hope he finds the other Tom Osborne and brings him in on special teams just so we can talk about it. Because so far, I mean, yeah, it was last year, quote unquote, a disappointing season. Sure, but coming off of a championship to still participate in the Big Ten championship, still be in a close playoff game. And kind of to that point, like their biggest competition in that Miami game to a degree was themselves, right? It was their own quarterback kind of selling them out against Miami's defense. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That's the step they have to take, which is to trust Jeremiah Smith in the way that they have since he got on campus. I think this is a very clear one, there is no 1A. It is a kind of a lone in the S tier. But for something like this, I just wanted to have more bite to the apple. But I think Jeremiah Smith is the easy answer at number one here. He's, to your point, probably the best returning player in college football, certainly non-quarterback. And even within the quarterback conversation, I wouldn't even put him ahead of I would put him ahead of all the quarterbacks because he's produced with the spotlight on him with the expectations last year.
Will, do me a favor. Pull up Ohio State's schedule right now.
Okay.
If Ohio State dominates the Big Ten this year with the schedule that they have, I'll be stunned. And I mean dominate from a standpoint of it's 35-0 midway through the third quarter, and Gus Johnson is just trying to keep himself awake watching Big Noon or something like that. Their schedule is going to follow a different sort of feel within conference play. It is a really hard schedule, and nobody's ever going to probably bring that up for Ohio State just because of how successful they've been in conference play over the years. But it is the type of schedule where, in theory, you can get these big time moments. And last year, Ohio State didn't have those in the regular season. Like, granted, they had a few of those opportunities sitting there in the Big Ten championship, and they weren't able to take advantage of them. But if there are more of those opportunities on the table for him this year, I think that benefits Jeremiah Smith as well.
I love that both Ohio State and Texas have learned a lesson that took me exactly one season of CFB 25 to figure out, which is that you don't schedule a opening game to be against a team like Texas or Ohio State. Both teams have now put kind of a cupcake ahead of this game, whereas last year they both led off with each other, and it just was a messy, gross game. You talked about the drops, and you could almost kind of write that game off. Look, if Jeremiah Smith is dropping passes, maybe we forgive Arch for hitting people in the knuckles and the knees a little bit. I don't know, but I think it's actually going to be a good football game this year. And to your point, that's why it was so easy for me to, have the schedule because I already had Texas pulled up. But that being said, this is actually a pretty hard schedule. I mean, like we could joke about Ball State, but they're going to Texas. It's not like they have a cupcake out of conference schedule. So it's Ball State, Texas, Kent State to start off the year. And then in conference, you're at Iowa, a team that almost got Oregon last year, at Indiana, a team that got Ohio State last year, at USC, a team that's always a year away from being a year away, and Oregon, which is right there with Ohio State, obviously, and then a Michigan team that we've seen Ryan Day struggle with. So, yeah, I mean, they're really not avoiding anyone this year. They have a strong SEC game on the road, and they have pretty much every team you'd be, quote unquote, worried about in the Big Ten.
Definitely. So, yeah, I think that'll play into his Heisman case if there is one to be made late in the season. All right, there's an obvious number 2, in my opinion. Will you take it? You got two chances to be able to take him. So far away.
So my first pick is going to be Cam Coleman.
Wow.
Now,
dang. Okay, that's not where I thought you were going.
Interesting. Okay, well, I have a wild card at number 3, so we'll see how this goes. You might actually end up with your top 2 guys. But that being said, I am of the opinion that Arch Manning cannot win the Heisman in the modern era, right?
Given what? Why?
Because I think there's too much coverage. I think it's already been out there. I think the redemption story, like we're too eager for the headline. And if he starts off the year playing well, people are going to get tired of him and start critiquing him. And I just don't think their schedule sets up. Like I said, that's why I had the schedule already pulled up, because I don't really think their schedule sets up in such a way that he could have like an early season nosedive and then kind of make it back. It gets harder as the year goes on. Yeah, there's a bye week in there. But that being said, I think that Texas is going to get so much coverage. There's going to be so many people holding up a microscope to Arch Manning that they're eventually going to start to look over and go, who's this fella? It's like when you hear the college coaches end up like, offering a teammate because they go to a practice or game to go watch this guy. I think that when the smoke clears and someone from Texas needs to be selected, maybe Arch will be there. I'm not saying he won't, but I think that Cam Coleman will be just inside that top 10, which is enough to get me some votes here.
Okay, so how is Cam Coleman going to win the Heisman Trophy if Arch stays healthy? He can get picked apart. I agree with you, but if Cam Coleman is at that level, it's going to be because Arch is throwing him the football and because he's playing immensely well with his new surroundings. I had Cam Coleman actually in my honorable mention just outside of my top 9, so you could have gotten him way later than you would have thought, but I took him last year as like my 4th pick in this draft because I'm like, well, gosh, Auburn could be like rotating through 3 quarterbacks. And if they're like 8-4 or something like that, and he's putting up insane yardage and like the catch radius we know is incredible with him. Like you don't have to sell yourself in the skill set, but like the Arch factor prevented me from wanting to put him so high. And I just tend to think that if they are having that type of year, like him edging out Arch in the way that like Devontae Smith did with Mac Jones, it's just like a really, really tough thing to buy into. But I love
it's a floor raiser. Like I said, I don't think he can win the Heisman. I think he can get in the top 10. And like we just talked about, we had like 3 guys total in the top 10 that we picked. I think getting in the top 10 is such an asset. And then hopefully, if I swing and get a ceiling raiser later on. But we've said enough nice things about Cam Coleman. If you've been following the pod for a minute, right? He is a freak receiver. He's been so underappreciated at Auburn. Now he's in a system with one of the greatest offensive minds in football. And I still believe that about Steve Sarkisian. If they could actually block, would be very nice. They lost a lot of guys to the NFL. The receivers couldn't get open. Arch was very up and down last year. I think that we're going to be telling the story of a Texas kind of turnaround here. And yeah, obviously Archie's going to get the lion's share of that. But like I said, he's very divisive. Some people hate the Mannings, don't know who that could be. But I think that being said, like Cam Coleman is a guy who already has that redemption story built in. And I think that being that physical freak and being the guy who quote unquote did it the right way, went to Auburn, hung out, and then said, "Hey, I gotta get drafted at some point, guys. I need to catch some footballs for my highlight for my huddle." I think that he's just going to be a guy with no enemies. And I think that eventually those guys just get up to the top 10.
Yeah, the first big time catch that he makes, Cam Coleman unlocked, coming from the PFF social account that doesn't have any more people working for the company anymore. That'll get ready for that tweet.
You'll see the AI that did not watch the Arkansas game last year. Yeah. Yes.
That's exactly it.
And why would you, honestly? To be honest, we're sickos for that.
Yeah. All right. So you get the third overall pick is yours. If you don't take the guy, I think you're gonna take knock me over with a feather. I've already won this draft.
I'm so scared because, like I said, this guy was gonna be a flyer for me. All right, well, here it goes. Harlem Berry, running back, LSU.
No way. No way.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Yes. Let me tell you why, Cotter. The exact reason that Lane Kiffin and Kevin Smith were brought in to Louisiana was to run the dang football. I bet you every time a booster that signed Lane Kiffin's paycheck met him this offseason, what did he tell him? Son, run the dang football. I think that if they were able to do what they did last year, okay, imagine, or at Ole Miss, imagine the quarterback play. Like I said, I think it's not going to be great from a quarterbacking standpoint at LSU. There's not a guy that's really sold me. Levitt's not healthy. Some of the guys, like kind of in the background, haven't really stepped up in camp. I keep getting the defense is playing well in camp.
Don't sell your Landon Clark stock.
I'm not selling my Landon Clark stock. I actually kind of told you I was hot on him, and he's really taking a lot of first team reps. But that being said, he's still from Elon. And so my take being, what has Lane Kiffin done when things have gotten rocky for him? Hand off the football to a true bell cow back. How rare is that in modern college football that you have a true bell cow back? I think that if you're trying to get a non-quarterback Heisman, this is exactly what you're looking for. A rebuilding team with a new offensive line and a quarterback that could be really anyone, and one guy that was told, you sit right here. You don't transfer. We're going to give you money, and we're going to feed you the rock. That's our guy.
Caden Durham, other guy. Caden Durham, still a good football player.
Caden Durham's still a good football player, but I think he was an afterthought. I think if you look at the timeline and who they called first, one of the first guys that Kevin Smith called was Harlem Berry. And they said, "Oh, Caden Durham, you want to stay? That's cool. You could, could be our little backup here. That's great. We could put you in the most confusing role that Lane Kiffin knows how to do with a backup running back." But I think that historically, yeah, I mean, you could kind of talk about him splitting carries, but I don't really think if Harlem Berry develops in the way that I've kind of seen the pictures of him and seen the jump that he's made from his freshman year as a true bona fide 5-star freshman from Louisiana, I don't know what Caden Durham brings you that Harlem Berry doesn't. That usually with Lane Kiffin, they have kind of two different body types of guys. So I think he wins this job early, and I think he holds on to it and gets, is at least top 5 in the SEC in rushing, which again, hard to get out of that.
It was funny to see that once Brian Kelly got fired, Harlem Berry, the 5-star true freshman, just starts actually getting reps. And then down the stretch, you're reminded, oh yeah, this guy's pretty good. And there's a reason why we heard about him a lot in the recruiting process. The only, I don't want to just crap on this too much. I can't believe you took Harlem Berry with the third overall pick of this. What if I told you like a guy in Lane Kiffin's scheme could have 300 carries, 24 rushing touchdowns? He could be a baller for a team that's, I don't know, like 20 seconds short of getting to a national championship, and he could still not finish top 10 in the Heisman voting. What would you say about that?
There's no Trinidad Chambliss on this team. I think that was the story. I think it was this crazy, various state guy. Oh my gosh, like it's the inverse of the Manning thing, where we all wanted to root for Trinidad. We all kind of were like, the media, people, fans are rooting against, Arch based on like all the overall coverage of him. I don't see a quarterback stepping up this year in the way that Trinidad has.
Can't believe you took Harlem Berry. All right, that's the stunner. I have just won this draft because I get Malachi Toney. I get Malachi Toney with the 4th pick, and I almost took him 1. I think I can make a case that he is maybe the best returning player in college football outside of Jeremiah Smith. Like that argument is really, really good, of course. But like even with Jeremiah Smith, I think the things that he did as a true freshman were special. Now, did he win a national championship like Jeremiah Smith? No, but I should probably stop comparing him to Jeremiah Smith because he's a very different player. I was looking forward to the national championship for all the obvious reasons, right? I really think though that there are certain guys that when you see them in person, it changes your perception of them. I knew I liked Malachi Toney based on how he looked to me on television. Seeing him in person and seeing the way that he moved, how slippery he was, how even the east-west movement with him feels just like he is at a different speed is special. And seeing that dude was like everything confirmed. Everything confirmed about Malachi Toney. At 18 years old last year, he was 17 at the start of the year. Not sure if you heard that. It was the Ryan Williams stat all over again. Didn't turn 18 until like week 3 of the season because he reclassified. His snap count and the versatility is just staggering already in the way that he was used. So his snap count last year, he had 705 snaps out of the slot, 132 wide receiver snaps, 20 in the backfield, all of which were week 10 or later. That was Shannon Dawson basically saying, "Oh, if we just give you direct snaps and do Wildcat, this is actually pretty fun." 16 quarterback snaps, and he threw 2 touchdown passes. 15 inline snaps as well. And he's also the primary punt returner. They basically just said, Malachi Toney, we're just going to keep throwing more and more at you. And we're just going to do this until we feel like you can't really handle all these different things involved in the playbook. And guess what? He handled all of them. And this is a guy that was barely a 4-star recruit coming in. So maybe people are a little bit slow to him. And then he started blowing up in camp. But he ends up leading FBS receivers with 33 missed tackles forced. He leads FBS receivers with 58 first downs, leads them with 841 yards after the catch. Of course, he's unbelievable in space. And then just in case that's not enough, he leads FBS with 109 catches last year, played primarily out of the slot, but still had 9 catches on passes that traveled 20 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. That's really good. That's the same as Isaiah Satania last year, who we kept saying, like, this guy might be like the best home run hitter in the SEC. He was at least the most valuable home run hitter in the SEC with what he did for Oklahoma. This is someone who is 18 years old. 18 years old. And maybe he's not as refined as a route runner as some of these other guys that he's going to be compared to are. That's fine. I just think that he is so special already. And I do think that Miami making that shift in the latter half of the season to be more of like a quick hitting passing team was primarily because you didn't want Carson Beck making those mistakes. And Shannon Dawson's like, I don't want him throwing deep passes over the middle. I would much rather have a safer offense. But you could also do those things because you could just be like, hey, Malachi Toney, screen pass, get a convoy. Hey, you're 1 yard past the line of scrimmage, get it and go. And that's what's so fun and what makes him such a lethal player. I watched him cook. I thought he was the best offensive player on the field at a national championship. Like, he had a better game than Fernando Mendoza, who was running for his life from Ruben Bain, of course. But even with the transition to Darian Mensah, who is also a Heisman candidate, I just think Malachi Toney is the real deal. And so getting him with my second pick, I'm ecstatic. No way I thought I'd get him.
So you're right, and I get you, but I just think there are enough narrative things working against him. Like, again, I'm not saying I fault you. I'm just telling you my logic, which is that, when was the last time the University of Miami had 2 just good seasons back to back? Just seasons that went awesome, that things were great, that we said, hey, last year, oh my God, you did well enough to have expectations. This is going to go great for you. In fact, falling short of expectations is how Miami ended up kind of flying under the radar and putting their backs against the wall and being what they were. I think they're going to have such a target on their back. And again, I think the Carson Beck part of it just so heavily factors in his usage rate last year. I think it's so hard to find guys who have that type of freshman season and then get better every year without being compared to the former versions of themselves. And so I had kind of and again, does Cam Coleman break some of the barriers that I said I don't want to draft guys that are like this? This is a weirdly kind of short list of guys this year, right? Like, I agree with that. But that being said, I think he's going to be compared to, I think Miami's going to be compared to last year. I think he's going to be compared to his version of last year. And then also, again, like, you could say what you want about Mensa, Evil Empire, whatever, but the amount of hatred that Miami has for Carson Beck will just never be equaled in that way. And so it's 2 things about Beck. It's that he wasn't very good and he didn't trust himself, so they didn't really open up the offense for him. And then also it's that no matter what happened, he was not going to get credit for it, just because he's Carson Beck. And so I think the inverse of that is true with Mensa. I think he spreads the ball around a ton, and I think he's a likable guy once you get past the way that they acquired him.
But it's that part of it, though. That's my question.
But again, he's going to be a good guy compared to Carson Beck, who we just saw throw a bologna sub to end the season. And so I think there was just
It was a
enough
great
built in.
pass. I don't know what you're talking about. I love that
One of the
pass.
greatest passes in your life. Yeah, exactly. Look at this hover now.
I levitated when that pass happened, Will.
Yes. But again, I think Tony's an awesome player. I think everything that you just said, the special teams part of it, the screens, how he gets involved, like, I think he's a great player. I'm just at this point betting against the University of Miami. I hate to say it that way. I have a lot of UM buddies, you know that. But I think at this point, the odds of Miami going, okay, we did this last year, we know exactly how things are going to go. That's just not how Miami sports work.
The arc that you get in the regular season, and again, this is pre-Heisman. It's important to remember that this is not voted on after the national championship or anything like that, is that they can win the ACC, and they've not been able to do that. And so if they're winning the ACC and he's the best player on the field for that team, he's got all these viral moments, and everybody is just saying to themselves, oh my God, Malachi Toney is so special, and we still get another year to be able to watch him in college football. He's just one of these guys where if you're going to stand out as a non-quarterback, you have to have something that people just are drawn to about your game. Jeremiah Love had something that people were drawn to about his game last year, even though the numbers didn't necessarily support a guy that was third, ends up being third in the Heisman voting if you compare him to some of the running backs who missed out on that opportunity in recent years. But because of how magnetic his style was, and it could just take over at a moment's notice, like, it just kind of adds to it a little bit more. So I think Malachi Toney has the flash to be able to do that. So yeah, giddy that he's picked with my second pick and 4th overall. So it is back to you, your 3rd pick, 5th overall. Who you got?
I'm so scared now. All right, I'm gonna
Dude, I already won the popular vote. So, like, don't even worry about that anymore. At this point, you're right, though. It is just kind of like going for the top 10 guys.
But again, this one can be tracked. I just want to say that.
I know.
I lose every voting award. That's why we just kind of stopped doing voting for the SDS account, because I'm like, I do unpopular stuff that when you look back, hey, I'm batting 50%, but it's a draft. Like, it's going to be 50-50. But sometimes I'm like, I kind of know where your head's going to be at. So I'm going to try to get some other value here. Okay. This is going to be another wild one. I'm so excited.
Will just being off the rails in this draft was not something I expected.
Yeah. You know what? I'll go RB heavy here. I'm going to go Jordan Marshall, running back Michigan. Wow. I'm really big on Michigan as far as their comeback this year. I talked about my kind of anticipation of Bryce Underwood. And I'm going to kind of backdoor cover that on this side by saying I do think this is a run-heavy offense, and I covered that whenever I talked about Bryce Underwood. I think that they're going to have enough empty games where you're going to look at the end of the year and kind of go, oh my God, this guy had all these yards, and he's the kind of focal point of this team outside of Underwood, who I think has already been a very headline-prone guy. I'll just put it to you like that. Whereas Michigan, they want to be Michigan men, play Michigan, brand football. And so I think that the natural push from fans is to say, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to do exactly, we're going to have quorum, like kind of have that mold of how we won the championship. So I'm going to load up, go RB heavy, and get hopefully another safer guy from Michigan.
Is he better than the guy who left, Justice Haynes?
I don't think so, but I think Michigan's going to be a more competent team.
Yeah, the ground game is going to be really effective with Kyle Whittingham. It was a staple of what Utah did. You bring over the same offensive coordinator. There's familiarity there from just like what they're trying to teach and what they're trying to implement in that offense. And some of the things that they do are very highly regarded with offensive line play and guards pulling and stuff like that. That's just really friendly to what a running back is walking into. I wonder how much there's going to be I don't want to say show the world that Bryce Underwood is that guy type energy, you know what I mean? But like to try and do right by him and to try and show this guy is everything that we paid for. And like when we stole him from LSU and we paid him all this money. And if they shift some of that, and if there's a little bit of this like push and pull with that early on where they're like struggling to find their identity, there are people that really like this Michigan roster and think that Michigan is like one of these teams that, man, even though it's a year one coach, if they're like in contention for a Big Ten championship late in November, it's not going to come as that much of a surprise. And again, we already talked about like Ohio State having this really difficult schedule and what that could potentially look like. And Michigan's just like a team that's kind of just been waiting, and they've kind of loaded up on talent, like really young talent that they're expecting to take like that year 2, year 3 jump. But That's an interesting pick. I did not expect you to go with Jordan Marshall. I thought that Justice Haynes would have been picked before he was. But certainly the idea of like a Kyle Whittingham running back just being a dude and all of a sudden becoming a household name, I will not push back on that one bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm rooting for teams and narratives here because often,
Yeah.
we fixate on players. It's like that often can be kind of more of a headwind than a tailwind. And I do think, it's about having a competent coach versus not having a competent coach in Michigan,
Sure.
right? I think Bryce Hunter was a good player. I saw just enough out of him to go, okay, if this guy had a coach that was focused on football, we'll just leave that there. Maybe they
What
could
was
be.
Jerome more focused on?
Man, he was focused, I'd say, on other areas of the building, the architecture going on,
Oh.
maybe some of the wall art, kind of things that weren't on the field. Just, So, and that being said, the not to talk about LSU, but that guy just with absolute snake bitten option here of do I go play for Brian Kelly or do I go play for Sharon Moore? Either way would have been kind of a disaster. I don't think he would have saved either of those ships, but I think to either end up with Lane Kiffin or Whittingham, I think is a good secondary stop for both of these teams. So yeah, I think Whittingham has certainly been an adult in the room. He's a guy who has really consistently brought what he's brought. I do really like that hire for them to kind of go outside of their, again, typical Michigan man thing. But if you look at any of the useful Utah teams, they were just so gritty and scrappy. And you look up and they're averaging 6 yards per carry on like 30 carries, and you're like, how did we get here?
Yeah. All right. I'm surprised that we have not gone with an SEC running back yet. So, oh no, Harlem Berry, SEC running back. One of the decorated SEC running backs, I should say. All right.
You're like a starting running back.
So far, only an RB2 in the SEC has been picked. No, I love Harlem Berry. I'm going with Ahmad Hardy. Is that a chalky pick here? Friends don't let friends bet on preseason Heisman favorites. Friends don't let friends just say that Ahmad Hardy is another Mizzou running back, because he is not. He is definitely not. We saw that last year. I used to say that about Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, because he kind of course, like burst onto the scene immediately, and people are like, typical Wisconsin. But no. Watch the runs that Jonathan Taylor has. This guy is not Ron Dane. Okay,
I started to say he's not Ron Dane. So
it's
true.
not Monte Ball. Like, I love those guys. Trust me. Do not get it twisted. But
I love that comp though, because if you look at like NA, love Larry Roundtree, love some of the Larry Roundtree songs. But if you would watch Mizzou and how they struggled, at that point in the kind of drink era, it was like Mizzou was struggling, and that part of the offense was part of it. Whereas if you watch Hardy, it's like the rest of the Mizzou offense is doing what the old Mizzou offenses used to do. And he's like one man Jon Snow sword meme, just fighting the entire defense by himself. Like, please get me some help, bro.
And I think he's got some help. That's the good news. So if you're wondering, hey, have we already seen his ceiling? I mean, the guy led power conference rushers with 1,649 rushing yards last year. He led power conference rushers with 828 rushing yards in the second half and overtime. Like, the yards after contact, we kept bringing up 1,181 rushing yards after first contact. To do so in the SEC, like that's insane. Like, we know that he can handle the SEC punishment. The transition from the Sun Belt to the SEC, like, confirmed he's fine. But how is he going to get better? Because simply running it back for a guy that didn't finish in the top 10 in the Heisman voting, you could go like, what's this really going to look like? And the path for me stems more about not so much even just the surroundings, but what he did in those big time games. He was quiet in the big time games last year. He was not good enough to have a post-October Heisman push. That's it right there. Like, that's kind of going to be his arc this year, if there is one. And he had the 5 games against teams that finished in the AP top 25. He had 1 touchdown total and averaged 8 rushing yards in those games. That took him out of the race. So this year, you obviously have to be able to turn around that stat. You have to do so against the Alabamas of the world. That matters. And it's not necessarily a deal where he's got to be playoff bound. Remember, 3 consecutive Heismans from 22 through 24 where those guys weren't going to the playoff. And you could say that was before the 12-team playoff. I would say, well, I guess 24 wasn't, but 2 of those years were. You could say, like, all right, that also gives Mizzou more of a chance if you're saying that it is all about the playoff. I don't think Mizzou is a playoff team. I'm not saying that. But I am saying if you're part of those conversations and if you're in the playoff discussion into November, then it kind of changes the way that you are discussed in the Heisman Trophy race. But the surroundings, that's probably the biggest thing that's going to change whether or not he improves in those big-time games. We know Austin Simmons is going over there. And what if just Austin Simmons is 75% of what I thought he could possibly be last year? What if it's just that? And even if the mistakes are still there, what if he's a guy that stretches the field? This guy that He has Chip Lindsey and Garrett Riley and Eli Drinkwitz all in his ear. This is a guy who came from Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. Like, he's had no shortage of these great offensive minds to be able to work with. Maybe some of that has rubbed off on him. Maybe he just needed to work through the kinks early last year, and that's going to help one Ahmad Hardy. So if that happens, we see Ahmad Hardy have fewer of these loaded boxes. And yeah, I will say this. The last time that a power conference running back finished top 2 in the Heisman voting, Will, do you know the answer to this?
Give me that stat again.
The last time a power conference running back finished top 2 in the Heisman voting. Because remember, Jeremiah Love was 3rd last year. I would consider Notre Dame power conference, so he would have still counted, but he did not finish top 2. When was the last time we saw a power conference running back finish top 2 in the Heisman voting?
Was it around that Henry era, like 2016?
It's a good guess. Henry was 15, but 17, Bryce Love.
Yeah, I thought it was like after Henry, but right around, yep, Bryce Love makes sense.
That's the path for Ahmad Hardy. Just shy of a 2,000-yard season pre-Heisman. Stanford was a 4-loss team. They lost in the conference championship. At least 4 losses pre-Heisman. That's the path for Ahmad Hardy to be able to follow. Yes, he is competing against himself. Darn good football player. Love me some Ahmad Hardy.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like same deal, chalky pick. I think he's a great player. I think that the difference between Austin Simmons and even what they had last year, and to your point, like when the quarterback position struggled last year, that offense just took a nosedive, and Hardy did everything he could to fight that. But even like in the bowl game, they started off with that strong drive where he's cooking, and we were like joking about easiest bet in the world was hit the over on him. And then people were like, all we got to do is stop this guy. And the thing about Austin Simmons, and you make that point about, the great minds he's worked with, those minds said we would rather take a chance on Trinidad Chambliss because this guy is the one unforgivable sin as a quarterback who's trying to figure it out, which is turnover prone. I think that if you have a mid quarterback who would rather take off and fall down and lose 2 yards or get 2 yards, that's one thing. But if you have Austin Simmons, who is just single-handedly throwing you out of the Kentucky game, and it's like, what are we going to do here? I posted a hot yoga photo this morning, and now they're laughing at me. I got to get in this guy from Paris State and pretend he's hurt. And so, like, that's what scares me is that the connection he has with the receiver that moved over,
Caden Lee.
I think that, like, it's just this offense is set up to be kind of herky-jerky, but you're so right. It's not same old Mizzou with the offensive minds they have in the building. It's just too many question marks whenever you bring in like that guy as a quarterback and you don't really have the cachet. Like, that's why I would compare this. Like, you could say, why do you feel this way about Harlem Berry and not him? Well, because Lane Kiffin's going to do what he needs to do to move the football. Whereas I feel like if you don't have the cachet like Drink doesn't, and you bring in a quarterback and pay him the way that he did, that guy can kind of start to get in his own head and be like, I'm the guy, a la Carson Beck, and things can go roughly for you.
Chip Lindsey did do great things with Drake May. Just saying. Didn't work out last year with Bryce Underwood.
Very true. Now, Drake May is awesome, though. That's the thing.
Yeah, true. But yeah, having all those guys, like, I keep forgetting, like, Garrett Riley's just the quarterback's coach at Mizzou, which is just such a weird thing to process how all that went down. But okay, you have this is the 7th pick overall, your 4th pick. You're going to go off the board again. I could just, you're going more wild card than I could have ever imagined.
Yes. So again, I think this is kind of a outside of the quarterbacks, a running back heavy one. Go Nate Frazier.
Wow. So we had this conversation last year about him, and it's tricky because there is a lot of talent there, and some of the things that he did last year just made you say, yep, I get it. I get it why this guy is just built for this Georgia offense. He's a perfect fit for it. But it's just the lack of elite 1,000-yard rushers that Kirby's had in the 2020s. Like, hasn't had one since DeAndre Swift, which is just kind of crazy to process. That's the only thing that's really preventing me from going with a Nate Frazier. And just Georgia has kind of been a little bit more specialized in their type of roles. And if a guy is going to emerge as like top 10 in the Heisman voting, you pretty much need to be like a 250 carry, like close to 300 scrimmage yard. I guess Jeremiah Love was like a 250 scrimmage yard or scrimmage touch type guy, but like the volume, I just don't know that it will support it, even though Nate Frazier is awesome.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of a flyer, which again, a little bit earlier in the draft. I get it. But that being said, I look at this Georgia offense and I like the offense, but it feels devoid of that exact one star, you know? And like, I know with the quarterback position last year, like there was some progress made, there was some regression at the end of the year, right? And I think that now we have kind of had this Bobo renaissance. We're going, we need both Bobos to be successful. I think that so much of a big part of what Georgia sells is the pro style, quote unquote, offense. It is the play action pass game. I think that's when Georgia's pass game has been the best. What's been the most effective is when it counters off of the run game. I think when they've kind of smelled their own, or they've kind of read their own press clippings here and said, no, like we have a franchise quarterback, we're going to make this work. I think that's when the offense has started to list a little bit. Whereas I think, again, riding the running back could really help them here. And again, guys, we're deleting the quarterbacks from this. So obviously that doesn't mean that I'm like out on anyone throughout my entire list. I think it's just more so, hey, who could end up being the one guy in the position where they're not really pushing that quarterback forward? And that's how I feel there.
It is interesting how much last year they trusted Gunnar Stockton to be a runner in the red zone, which I think
That's
probably
a really good point. That's a really good point. The amount of red zone Gunnar Stockton touches. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a situation that Bobo said, look, not typically what we've done in this offense, but if you feel comfortable in these spots, we feel comfortable with you. And when they're not dumping it off to Cash Jones on third down or something like that, like they call that a lot.
Cash Jones for prison. That's the thing. Hopefully we get fewer Cash Jones touches. Now there is like some more guys in the backfield this year. But that being said, like I just feel like it's the time. Like one thing Kirby does believe in is like guys earning their spot, and I think Frazier's done enough to do that.
Yeah. All right. Should I keep it rolling with another SEC running back? A lot of great SEC running backs. That's going to be. No, I'm going to go Jaden Baugh.
Jaden Ball's a really good one. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Question I find myself asking. What if John Summerall just gives Jaden Baugh the football 300 times this year? Like it's nothing.
Like could very well happen.
That would be Kewan Lacey's workload last year. Remember, John Summerall said he wanted to give Jaden Baugh the football 10 more times while watching him get 38 carries against Florida State. That lets you know where his priorities lie. And that could have just been at the time, lip service. He's just trying to say the right thing, whatever. They go through this negotiation with NIL, this is the way that it works now with all retaining players and whatnot. You have to go through this process. You have to look at what the roster is, what the talent on the roster is that's actually worth saving, and make those decisions with your staff, how you're going to be able to spend to keep these guys, blah, blah, blah. They go through this process. And what do? They keep Jaden Baugh. They pay him well. They pay him
and who didn't they keep and pay well?
They did not keep one DJ Lagway. They did not. And I think there was a very clear and obvious decision from that staff to say, we can build an offense around this dude. And look, this is just another reminder of like John Summerall is trying to right all these Billy Napier wrongs. And what do we say so many times on this podcast? Give Jaden Baugh the football. Give him the ball. So the final 8 games last year that started with that Texas game where he gets 27 carries in that game. We're both texting. I was there at that game. We're like texting each other like, oh my God, look what happens when Jaden Baugh gets all these first quarter touches. Like Florida gets off to a lead and actually looks competent. What a crazy thing to consider. In Florida's final 8 games of the season, he averaged 110 rushing yards plus another 18 in the passing game. So he averaged 128 scrimmage yards in the last 8 games. Once we all said, Jaden Baugh's actually getting the football. What a concept. He's being used the way that he should be used. Last year, Jeremiah Love averaged 10 more yards per game from scrimmage and was 3rd in the Heisman voting while forcing 9 fewer missed tackles than Jaden Baugh. Now he's got a coach who recognizes the volume is really important with him. He's got a better offensive coordinator and play caller in Buster Faulkner to be able to maybe overcome Florida's offensive line issues if they take a small step back. We're going to talk about that more with JD PicKell in a second here. But like, if it's only a slight step back on the offensive line, I want to hold all of my Jaden Baugh stock. I do. If he is part of a multi-win improvement in Florida's offense, actually fits his skill set a little bit better, which a little bit of a scheme change with some of the things they're going to try and do, he can absolutely be part of the Heisman Trophy discussion. Maybe there could be that transition early on that with the scheme, gap versus zone, all that stuff. That's something that is a learning curve. But if he overcomes that, man, I think he is just too good of a player to not be in these conversations. And so I am ecstatic to get Jaden Baugh 4th on my board and now my 4th pick in this draft.
Yeah, I love the pick. I mean, for the reason I love the player, right? So I think he could be like a top 5 talent-wise overall running back in college football. I'm going to just put you in the spot really quick. Just scheme independent, team independent. If I said, "Hey, you got to take 5 SEC running backs on team X," could you rattle off 5 that are like your favorite right now?
In order, see, I keep going back and forth with this because I really could make the case that Baugh is 1. Now, I would still take Hardy because I love Hardy and I love his ability to run through contact. I think Lacey is special, of course. So like that's the tier 1. That's like that's I would probably more so put them into tiers, and then it's kind of like everybody else. I wouldn't put Frazier in that top tier just yet. I think those guys have shown more. I think the guys that are coming into the league, a Hollywood Smothers or Raleek Brown coming over from Arizona State, are really, really intriguing. I couldn't put them in that category just yet. I can't put CJ Baxter into that like tier 1 with those 3 guys, but like for me, it's those 3 guys. Like they are like the difference makers. And in a given day, you feel like just give the ball to them 30 times, let them take over, and they're going to win a football game for you. They're going to win a football game for you when your defense isn't making all the plays that they should. Your quarterback's a little bit shaky and you don't trust them, but like you have that guy back. And to me, that's the 7-figure value that you get. So I'm not trying to like squirt away from the answer. Ahmad Hardy would be my number 1 pick, but I would kind of go back and forth, like based on the given day between Lacey and Baugh, and you could probably talk me into either of them with my next pick.
I mean, that's just as good, if not a better answer, because it's about the tiers. It's like kind of making my point better, which is that, yeah, I'd put Ball up there with any of those guys. The only downside would be Florida, right? And we just don't know exactly what they are. I think that it's kind of underrated how good some of Napier's lines were, some of the talent they produced. But that being said, it's actually kind of marvelous to think about how a team with those wide receivers, those offensive linemen, that quarterback, even those running backs was as putrid as they were in offense. It's actually, again,
Play calling.
yeah. I mean, it's literally that. It's so fascinating. It's like me and you were out there just drawing stuff up because everything we see out of these guys is like, again, DJ is more of a wait and see. Ball is not. Ball was successful in that offense last year. That was kind of a fire. So I think that would be my only pushback is their win-loss total, and that maybe it would be a little bit. I can't even say it would be a Ahmad Hardy-esque because that requires there to be a kind of a rough scheme, a quarterback injury. I think that this scheme with Buster Faulkner is going to be awesome.
I think it will be too. I tend to think that that'll matter in that offense, and that'll provide him more upside. And I'd love to know what those conversations were of, hey, this is how you fit in this. This is the type. These are the changes you'll have to make, but we want to build this thing around you. I mean, I think it's been very, very obvious that is what they're going to try and do. No matter how this quarterback battle shakes out, they're building that thing around 13. Like that's going to be the case for them. All right, this is your last pick, your 5th pick. You've already taken wild cards left and right, so I don't think anything can surprise me at this point.
This is actually a flyer for me at this point, and it's a guy that I'm sure would go a lot higher in some of these drafts. And it's funny because I think you would laugh at me if I had a more standard draft, but this is actually, I think, going to be a safer pick here. Ryan Williams, Alabama.
Ryan Coleman Williams to you.
You're so right, Ryan Coleman Williams. I forget that he now shares a last name with my other receiver that I took earlier. But that being said, yeah, I am just going to try one more time to buy this Alabama offense, Cotter. Is that okay? Like, I think I could try one more time. There's kind of this weird quarterback situation. We talked about it last year. The offensive line wasn't awesome. They couldn't exactly find a run game, but I just think they're going to figure it out to some degree. And like Hollywood Smothers a lot, to your point. But that being said, like, I think that they, are going to they're going to have to move the football. And I think that Ryan Williams is the lone kind of known commodity in this offense. Now, has it been consistent? Absolutely not. It's been the exact opposite of that. From them force feeding him targets 2 years ago to last year, him not really showing up and recording like zeros in big games. I fully understand that. But Jeremy Bernard was so good. And I think that a lot of people lose that. We are Jeremy Bernard appreciators. And I think that that's what the offense did last year is it started to go, all right, Ryan Williams, in your freshman year, we kind of like kept feeding you the ball. This year, we're not going to give you that same grace of like the 10 target game, the 12 target game. We're just going to go to Jeremy because he's making it happen, or we're going to, do some weird stuff out of the backfield, or we're going to let Ty Simpson cook. This year, it's going to be, I think, a lot more back to that freshman season where we go, hey, we need a big third down here. We got to throw it to Ryan Williams and see what happens. And I mean, one play making a guy's career, it's like Michael Crabtree versus Texas, Ryan Coleman Williams against Georgia. It's like, it's starting to get farther days and days away from that play to where it feels a little bit more like against the rule because he hasn't improved much since that season. And I get that, but I think that the volume is going to be there for him as a wide receiver. The name is already there. He's made a ton of headlines. And I think that he is a name that like casual fans know to start the year, which I think is a really big deal for the Heisman.
The virality is there. I'm saying that word right. Virality. I don't know. You get what I'm saying. Dude can go viral for a variety of reasons. What's really weird about his career is that you look back at the quarterbacks that he's had, and two very different players in Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. And for him to endure the sophomore season that he had with Ty Simpson, a guy that people are now discussing, is he a first-round pick? Is he not a first-round pick? As opposed to Jalen Milroe, who like very obviously was struggling to make all the throws that they wanted to in that offense. Yet the splash plays were more evident with Milroe than it was with Simpson. And it's just strange the way that it's played out so far. You call it a sophomore slump if you want. Like there are things that from a route running standpoint need to improve. Of course, the drops, very, very well documented. It's hard to have the drops that he does and for, to be considered like one of the best players in this sport, but the talent is certainly there. Like we know that. And if he is on the same page with what I think will be starting quarterback Keelan Russell, then it takes it to a different level in terms of what they can do in a given day. And like what I think Russell is going to be able to bring to the table in a way that Simpson didn't is that Russell is really good at throwing on the move. He moves to throw. And if some of those plays, when it's just like, hey, things broke down, this is what Jeremy Bernard did really, really well. And to be able to help out his quarterback, like if Ryan Coleman Williams can add that part to his game, where all of a sudden it's just like, oh, you're having to cover him for 6-7 seconds. That sucks. That to me is where he can kind of make up the difference if his route running isn't at that pristine level, even if the catch radius and all those things are still really good. So yeah, I mean, I'm fascinated to see like how this season plays out with him because he didn't find a new home. Like he's still locked in with that coaching staff. If he really had a falling out, if things had gone that horribly, then there would have been a parting of the ways, and that's not what happened.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, right? Because it's an Alabama roster that in his freshman year, again, didn't really pan out the way that we thought from like a targets or like a weapon standpoint. And then I think last year, that's one area that I feel like it was underratedly good. The tight end that we kind of like sung his praises a little bit, whose name, of course, now escapes me. Jeremy, I think, was underrated. But I think it goes to that Ty Simpson was a very like percentage play guy. Like you could tell he had like a very math brain. He was very like, okay, it's 4th and 3. I need to make the play that will not get dropped. And I think that really limited Ryan Williams because he made mistakes. And I'm saying like that was his fault as a receiver. You have to be able to catch the football. Obviously, it's in the name. But I think that, with that level of volume with Milroe, like I said, set those expectations. And I think that Russell being a younger quarterback and not having the exact command of the offense, it's going to be a lot harder for him to check down to his, second, third, fourth, fifth reads. And it's going to be a little bit more Ryan Williams out there somewhere, which in his freshman year, he did flourish more. He did. I won't say the team did, but if we're talking about individual players here.
How old do you think Ryan Coleman Williams is right now?
Is he 20?
He ain't 20 yet.
Oh, he's 19.
Do you know when he turns 20, Will?
Is it in season?
Nope.
When?
February.
Oh my God. This is what I'm talking about. This guy was given too much responsibility too early. And I said this early. This is not Michael Thomas. He's not 6'5". He's not some cyborg. He is a finesse receiver. And I don't know why they turned him into that. Like, give him his 6 to 8 targets for an average of 20 yards, let him take the top off the defense and let him have fun versus like, all right, dude, come around a comeback and get just absolutely toasted,
Yeah. Not turning 20 until after, he will be 19. Like, no matter what. I mean, I shouldn't say no matter what. There is always the possibility that he comes back for another year of school. Very likely Ryan Williams will be going to the NFL, declaring for the NFL draft as a 19-year-old, which is just bananas.
And that's a key point of this too, whereas like he could have left, but he came back. It's like, I want to go first round or at least second round. Please give me those targets. Please guarantee me that. A world that never would have happened in Nick Saban's Alabama, but this is not Nick Saban's Alabama.
That is not. All right, last pick. gosh, there's a chalky pick, and then there's like 3 other ways that I'm kind of considering going. Man, I don't want to leave this guy off the board though. You know what? I'm in with him. Kewan Lacey. Give me Kewan Lacey. It's chalk. He has to be taken here. He has to be taken after he burst onto the scene last year. 24 rushing touchdowns. I don't care who is calling plays for you. I don't care what level of college football you're playing at. That's darn good. Okay. And he had one of these seasons that just all of a sudden was like, whoa, you have to take notice of this with the historic numbers that he's putting up. And I do understand that he's got a new offensive play caller. John David Baker has very big shoes to be able to fill. ECU was also 11th in the country in rushing attempts per game. They're going to feed him a lot. And as long as he's healthy, even if his volume is slightly less, he's still going to have a ton of volume in that offense. He's shown already that he can handle the workload. Led FBS with 306 carries, got banged up in the very last game of the season, still at over 1,000 yards after first contact. Just perfect versatility as well in terms of like gap to zone runs and all that stuff. Like you can do a lot of different things with him. The only reason I don't have him even higher is because of Trinidad. Like if I think Trinidad's the best returning quarterback in college football and has the ability to win a Heisman Trophy, then it's tough for me to be like, oh yeah, I should take Lacey with my first or second pick here. It's tough to envision a scenario in which Lacey is definitively better than Trinidad or more worthy of Heisman consideration, considering like we just watched Chambliss not even get a full allotment of starts and still finish 8th in the Heisman voting after the year that Lacey had. And yes, some of that was because of what he did in the playoff as well. But, if he just repeats what he did, not a given, but he's definitely a top 10 guy. And he's already shown that he could do it. He's already shown that he could do it in the SEC. Probably needs an injury to Trinidad Chambliss to like actually win the Heisman Trophy, if we're being 100% honest. But I couldn't not take him here, even though I see all the hurdles he's got to overcome.
Maybe I'm just damaged from Frank Wilson, but do you know the last time that Frank Wilson had a 1,000-yard rusher?
Golly, I knew you were going to throw this at me. Is it? Was he there for Edwards-Helaire? No. Gosh, is it like 2013 or something stupid?
Here's your hint. LSU never won a national title with him.
All right, give it to me. I'm not going to get this.
Leonard Fournette.
Confirmed good.
Confirmed good. Lacey?
Not Leonard Fournette. But
close. 80%, right? And that was the era of the bell cow back. Maybe after all the offseason chatter, they say, hey, Frank Wilson, you can't do this. Let's actually just feed this guy and prove everybody wrong. That's fine. But again, just looking back through the years of, oh, wow, okay, need Jaden Daniels to actually be like top 10 in the SEC rushing for this offense to move forward. I know that's not all Frank Wilson's fault, but for the same reason that I like Kevin Smith and the fact that he can basically – or at least Lane Kiffin's offense can make a Snoop Connor a double-digit touchdown guy. I think that the amount of regression I've seen from running backs, even a guy like Lacey, who to your point finished the year injured, he is Superman to a degree. He was still able to run off that long run while injured. I'm not taking away from him as a player. I think he's a great player. But that being said, it's two things. It's the last year of success, right? I guess it's three then. Then it would be Trinidad Chambliss's competition. And then it would be the difference in philosophies between the running back management of Lane Kiffin and the we did it all without Lane Kiffin. We want to change it. It's very hard to me to toe that line of we're going to keep everything the same, but Lane Kiffin was not the reason why we were successful. Maybe Frank Wilson does completely change his stripes, and maybe he decides to adapt what Ole Miss did last year and not what he did last year. But I don't know why you would bring a guy in to run things differently from what he has always done.
They brought him in to try and win the breakup. That's exactly why they brought him in. I mean, let's call it what it is. And part of Lacey's Heisman path is looking really good in that game against LSU as a guy that's been kind of outspoken against Lane a little bit, and then also getting Ole Miss to its first SEC championship appearance. That's got to check both of those boxes. Got to check both of those boxes. Got to put up ridiculous numbers. Acknowledge all that. I almost didn't pick him here because you're right. Like there are a lot of things that are probably working against him, kind of being able to follow that path, but just too accomplished for me to not have on this list, and too accomplished as a sophomore, first time starting running back, a player that I think is very, very good. Okay, so before we recap,
and I'll say really quick, that's certainly not me attacking Lacy as a player. I think Lacy's a great player. Like you talked about.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Felt directly like an attack will.
Well, I'll say it to you like this, though, right? For Lacy's career, same point that I just made about Ryan Williams is that ultimately you're preparing in your pre-draft season for the draft. Look at what Leonard Fournette did coming into the draft. He was banged up. He had too many carries on his knees. He had a short NFL career. So I think doing right by Lacy would be having fewer carries. I think that's a very fair logic that if you have this great quarterback and you have this multiple offense, you shouldn't have to lean on a running back that way.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I'll be stunned if he gets more carries this year. I don't.
He'll
think
have a 1,000-yard season. I just want to say that. I'm not predicting he does not have a 1,000-yard season. I'm just saying that it takes a special talent. He is one.
The guy that I was debating between him was LJ Martin at BYU, who is so freaking good. I think he's like maybe the best player in college football that people don't know about. And that's weird to say about a guy who was Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year last year, but like was insanely productive for that team. Like 1,560 yards from scrimmage, pre-Heisman, 36 catches out of the backfield. Like I was watching some highlights today of him again. I was like, that guy looks like Arian Foster. That is who he reminds me of. Just like so
talking about
smooth.
Some dudes. Yeah. Love Arian Foster, man. He was an interesting guy off the field too.
Still is. Yeah, still is. Macrodosing. The comp though, like I think is there. Like if you watch his game in BYU, like I just want to get out ahead of this. Like I am all in on BYU. Like could be semifinal levels of good. Like won't just win the Big 12. And if they get that redemption against Texas Tech, which that's going to be like the built-in narrative. And like if he goes off against Texas Tech with kind of a new look defensive front with some of those pieces they have to replace, like that could very much be there. And LJ Martin's just a darn good player. I think he could be part of that conversation as well. Talked about Justice Haynes before. Kind of crazy, like the college career that he's followed. Like, don't know how many guys that do like 3 schools in as many years and then win a Heisman Trophy. I'm going to go on record and say that's never happened before. I don't think, unless there's some crazy example that I'm just forgetting. But yeah, I mean, questions about what it's going to look like post Buster Faulkner at Georgia Tech. Still think that with the scheme that they're going to have there, like the ability to just go viral at a moment's notice, Justice Haynes possesses that in spades. I'm sure he won't make Bama fans, just puke in their mouth a little bit watching the plays that he's still going to make in a Georgia Tech uniform. But
don't worry, you got AK Deer, brother.
Let's just move right off of that. Cam Cook as well, getting in the Rich Rod offense, following the ever popular Jacksonville State to West Virginia path, but not in the same way that Rich Rod did, like in terms of timeline and all that stuff. Like Cam Cook led FBS in rushing last year, and I don't think the average fan could tell you what team he played for, or pick him out of a crowd, or anything like that, because when you do so in Conference USA, that's just the way that works. But like could be in a really interesting spot this year at West Virginia with more talent, more of a Rich Rod roster that they're going to have. Mark Fletcher, another guy that probably needs to be mentioned for this, but the problem being you've got Malachi Toney, you've got Darian Mensah. How are you going to emerge ahead of those two guys? And then also had Cameron Dickey, the running back at Texas Tech, Isaac Brown, kind of a bounce back year. And then Bo Jackson, if they're going to be better, different Bo Jackson, if they're going to be better on the offensive line at Ohio State, then he certainly can be really productive. The problem being, same as Mark Fletcher, 2 guys ahead of a Minnesota offense that are probably going to outpace him in the Heisman race. That's who I had. Was there anybody else that you wanted to bring up for this discussion?
I had DeCorian Moore on here for sure. That's another one, again, probably too much quarterback chatter around Oregon to make that one real. And then, Micah Hudson at Texas Tech. But again, same deal there. So he's be coming in there. So I think there's going to be a lot of like really cool matchups of like, new quarterback, new wide receiver one, or like only one of those sides being new and one guy being established that are going to be really interesting. Because some of those guys, I mean, we're only going to have a couple of weeks, obviously, in college football for those guys to gel. So I think there's going to be a tandem that we haven't really thought about. It's like, oh, they still have that guy and they picked up this guy and now they're buddies.
Yeah, could be something like that. Definitely. But a fun exercise to be able to do. So here's the recap. Again, we have already confirmed I am winning the popular vote. For this discussion, though, that means nothing. That doesn't mean anything. Will has Cam Coleman, Harlem Berry, Jordan Marshall, Nate Frazier, Ryan Coleman Williams. I have Jeremiah Smith, Malachi Toney, Ahmad Hardy, Jaden Baugh, Kewan Lacey. I went as chalky as chalk can be.
I like that neither of us got baited into taking a defensive player, though. I feel like we both did that last year. We usually do that. I'm just like, no, I'm going to take psycho offensive players this time.
Yeah, last year you took Dylan Stewart. I took Colin Simmons. I think there was one other on the board that we took. No, I don't think there was. Oh yeah, because we didn't take Caleb Downs, which was probably a mistake. But yeah, watch. This is now going to be the year that a defensive play. Like watch Coy Parrish, the transfer from Minnesota going to Oregon. Like he picks off like 12 passes this year or something like that, and Oregon's all of a sudden just like the best defense in college football. And yeah, something like that happens. But no, that is how it shakes out. We had all receivers and running backs for our non-QB Heisman draft. Good stuff. All right, let's kick it to our guy, JD PicKell. Great to be able to talk about some SEC spring games with him, talk about some storylines, get some kind of this or that. Which one would you take? We put him on the spot with some predictions. And yeah, I apologize for pretty much pushing him into the LSU national championship pick last year. So yeah, sorry, Will. Had to go there. We just did. Here is.
But let me be a little bit excited about Harlem Berry, and suddenly it's a no. He's a tier 2 guy.
All right, here is JD PicKell. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is JD PicKell, host of the Hard Count with On3. JD, before we get rolling here, we were texting about the OG Evergreen college football rules, and you listened. You maybe even helped a little bit with the Kyle Whittingham interview when he's comparing Bryce Underwood to Cam Newton, and not to go down that road again, but I would like to give you the platform to be able to add your own rule to this. And if you don't have any on the spot, I might have a few to get you started.
I'm so glad you said this, because as soon as y'all did that segment, massive disclaimer, huge fan of the show. So getting your text of like, hey, you want to jump on? I was like, dude, absolutely. I don't want to bury this at the end. Like getting to jump on one of your favorite college football podcasts as a guest, always an automatic yes for me on this side. In terms of additions to the rule, I've kind of been workshopping that myself since seeing y'all do your rules to follow up on that point. I think my hard and fast rule right now is like, what's the best way to say this? If it's not an emphatic yes about the offensive line during fall camp, then it's a no. I fell into this trap a year ago where the offensive line for LSU was sort of still a question mark, and you're talking to people during fall camp and they're saying, well, if they can just be good enough, and Nuss is so experienced and they have so much weaponry, if it's not an automatic, emphatic no, they're good on the offensive line during the preseason, then stay away from making any massive postseason projections. Kind of like getting married. Like if it's not a yes, for sure yes when you're dating, then like don't go on a knee and propose. So that's, I think, my rule as it stands right now relative to some evergreen rules that I've been cooking up since hearing I'll talk about it.
It's tricky. You're exactly right. And Texas was a good example of this last year, where all that inexperience on the offensive line, like it ended up being a huge hindrance to the first part of the year. Like you could look at Notre Dame 2 years ago and say that was a huge question mark going into the season. Now they worked through it, albeit with the Northern Illinois loss and everything, but they're kind of the rare case of like the team that was able to overcome it. They had opportunities to be able to do so, but you're kind of right. And it's something that you should probably factor into any sort of preseason projection or anything like that. I was just going to say, put every spring game on a streaming service.
Oh yeah, dude, come on. Yeah.
100%. What are we doing?
100%.
Like this weekend was awful for that. And you're watching these videos, and shout out to all the fans out there who are like, doing the Lord's work as true sickos and like at spring games, like doing, I don't know how they had enough battery on their phone to be able to do all these plays, but it's like, what are we doing here? We need the Hard Count streaming service to just have every sort of spring game content available for the people.
Dude, it's insane because in years past, we're sort of feeling our way through the dark of spring practice. Like we're on message boards, you're trying to get your best approximation for what's happening, like practice 1 through 14. But then we get to the spring game day and we all get to kind of take a peek into the house and say, oh, okay, this is what's going on during spring practice. This is what, that quarterback looks like. This is what that true freshman looks like. But now, like, we're still feeling our way through spring practice in the dark because of what you just said. We don't have these spring game broadcasts. We're piecing together clips put out by social media teams that are supposed to look good. So I'm with you, man. Like, if that's the one thing with the transfer portal windows that I would hope is something we get in the future, is with, if there is truly no blind transfers, like, put the games back on ESPN Plus, put them back on Big Ten Network. Just let the people get their fix in the month of April, man. It doesn't hurt anybody. Let's get just a little nibble of some college football in earnest.
Yeah, it's like, and if you're telling me, oh, well, they'll file that away and they'll see that second teamer in the way that they won't during the regular season, like that's going to provide too much. Then what are we doing? Let's just never let guys play football. Let's never let anybody, be seen by the light of day. It is ridiculous at this point. I was going to say another rule to add to this: only try jumping out of a pool if your team takes down a top 10 foe.
There we go. There we go. I mean, I don't know if I qualify in terms of my team taking down anybody in the top 10, but golly, yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. I think there should be some structure in place there. Also, if the pool is like got some lower water levels, so you can actually get out of it at a decent clip, probably also factors in.
You got redemption though. You're good.
Yeah, I mean, golly, we had to. I mean, with my daughter seeing that in real time, there was no other way but to find some redemption over the course of the next few months. Yeah, it was a long road back, but I appreciate you mentioning the redemption arc there.
You got there. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Let's talk some spring storylines here. I find myself wanting more Tramel Jones Jr. stock at Florida, and not just because of the 2 touchdowns that he threw in the spring game, albeit nice plays, but there's a reason why you see some of these plays out there. And I'm sure he had more struggles than probably what we are led to believe. But if I'm betting, I still think that Aaron Philo ends up being the guy. But, I still kind of look at this situation where I think that Jones has a real opportunity to kind of shorten that leash. And this coaching staff has told us loyalty is not a thing with us. Like we are not loyal to anybody specifically. What's your assessment of this battle and watching this play out?
I think the biggest takeaway out of spring is it's just what you said. It's a real battle. I think we all, once Buster Faulkner got Aaron Philo from Georgia Tech, we're like, okay, he knows the system. You clearly felt some conviction about bringing him with you to your new job. So tells us what you probably think of him before this battle even starts. But the way that Tramel Jones seemingly has practiced all spring and then shows up in the spring game, I mean, there are people in Gainesville that think that maybe Tramel Jones even has like a slight edge coming out of spring practice, which I think is really interesting. I think the other thought around this coming out of the spring is I don't think the scheme advantage that we all assumed Aaron Philo had, having been with Buster Faulkner, is maybe the advantage that we thought it was going to be. Because you also talk to people in Gainesville and they're like, hey, if we're out there doing a pro day workout, like Tramel Jones might look a little bit better with the ball coming out of his hand. He might have a little bit more physical presence to him. So if that's what we're hearing about Tramel Jones and the scheme advantage for Philo and digesting the system isn't there how we thought it was there, it's going to be a fun fall camp, man. And John Summerall has kind of put his chest out and said, like, I'll pick who I think is the best quarterback. The team will tell us who's the best quarterback. We started a guy named Darian Mensah, who had never played college football before when I was at Tulane, and things worked out okay over there. So just the truly even playing field this battle is coming out of spring, I think is super noteworthy. Because, I mean, Connor, they got a lot of weapons, dude. They got a lot of guys to get the football to.
And that's kind of the interesting thing that goes into it is, that they're going to probably end up just building the offense around Jaden Baugh. And yes, they do have those weapons at receiver, but they would like to be a run first team. They would like to have someone that can stretch the field somewhat and distribute and get the ball out of their hands quickly. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't feel like as open and shut as maybe we were probably led to believe when everybody assumed that once the Philo move happened, all right, it's his starting job to be able to lose. But yeah, a lot of different layers that'll factor into that. John Summerall told you when he basically got this job, or as he's being considered for it, he said, look, I wasn't sure that they were going to look at me because of the thing that everybody was talking about. Group of 5 coach from Louisiana. Would Florida actually be willing to pull the trigger on that? And I think it's really good to be self-aware going into year one, and he certainly appears to be that. The weird thing, though, is that from a personnel construction standpoint, nothing about Florida screams year one stuff. Like, it just doesn't. I mean, spend big on running back, make 2 big splashes at coordinator, and like brought in plug and play guys on defense. Like, how do you think with all of those things factoring in, year one plays out for John Summerall?
I think they're going to be super frisky. I think they're going to get somebody slipping at some point in time that will create like what I call a marketable moment for John Summerall, to where maybe they're not flirting with the playoff. We're talking about them in November of like, hey, here comes Florida. But I do think that after this year one dust settles on the John Summerall experience in Gainesville, we'll be like, okay, the arrow is clearly pointing up, and not pointing up in the way that it was when Billy Napier and DJ Lagway went 7-5, but like truly of a, oh, this has some actual staying power. Like they're winning in the things that good teams win at. Like, I don't know if you felt this way, but I watched Florida so many times last year be like, yeah, DJ Lagway's got some problems, but just not good in the go win the game moments, which is like a super broad brushy way to put it. But it just felt like chips are stacked. It's winning time. You can't find a way to get a stop against USF, or we got an egregious like personal foul penalty to extend that drive. Like just the things that good teams do, Florida was consistently not good at. And I think that's going to flip in a pretty big way under John Summerall. The one governor for them that makes me concerned, going back to the evergreen rules that I'm still workshopping on my end, you hear things about the offensive line of like, hey, still a massive work in progress. John Summerall, I think after the spring game, said they got to take a huge jump, otherwise we have no chance, which you're kind of trying to read through the Summerall knees of that, is the same guy who said post-game multiple times, like in on-field interviews, how bad Tulane was when they just like were on their march to the playoffs. So I don't know what to make of that. But I really do think that it's going to be a year where it's like 7-8 wins, but it's a good-looking 7-8, and we say, okay, 2027 is going to be a fun team to watch, and a real team that could compete for something worthwhile in terms of the postseason of college football.
Sifting through all the spring game videos that came out, what'd you make of Bama's quarterback battle this weekend with Austin Mack only getting the 5 drives? As Kalen DeBoer said afterwards, a little bit banged up in that one, a little bit dinged up, whatever he said, and then seeing all the reps for Keelan Russell.
Isn't it so tricky to use self-control in this situation? Like, because you're hearing about Austin Mack being dinged up. You look at the numbers, 5 drives, 6 of 12, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Like Bama also, their YouTube channel put out a couple of different highlights, and Austin Mack had a couple of throws where you're like, okay, I see why you're at Bama. Like, I see why teams are trying to tamper with you to get you away from Bama. But then you look at what Keelan Russell did, and you look at his box score, and you see what you just said, the clips on social media of him making some plays off platform. I just think when you know, like you probably had this same moment with your wife during the dating process. Pretty early on, you were probably like, hey, I think this is going somewhere where we're going to eventually have a life together. We still got to go through the dating process here. We still got to, put the work in and do the Valentine's days and X, Y, and Z. But like, we all kind of know where this thing is going. Just feels that way with me with Keelan Russell in Alabama. I understand that the non-contact jersey thing with him, in that spring game, there's a couple of plays where he probably gets smoked with some free runners off the edge. So I don't want to dismiss that. But just the way he moves in the pocket, the way the ball comes out of his hand, his ability to extend plays with his legs, which I think is going to be a big thing for Bama with the offensive line. It just feels like we all know where this is going. In the A-Day kind of matched up with things you hear about his talent and ceiling that he's put on display during spring ball in Tuscaloosa, man.
Maybe the better question, though, is how confident are you that the surroundings will actually be better for Alabama's QB1 this year?
Connor, how can it get much worse?
It can't.
On the O-line, I think we'd all be super shocked if Bama was in the 120s and rush yards. I think that feels like a little bit jarring. The one thing I do like hearing out of Tuscaloosa, out of the A-Day, is that they had the same starting 5 for the entire scrimmage for that first unit, which to me, like, you have to know before you build. Like, you have to have your starting 5 before you can actually like develop some cohesion and chemistry and synergy and all those things that make great offensive line play. If we were still playing musical chairs, much like Florida is with their offensive line, I think I'd feel a little bit more concerned. But I really do just feel like it can't get too much worse. You feel like you got your 5 you want to build with right now. Like, okay, like it's funny, like Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, you go back to what they were at Washington. It's not like the offensive line has been the equivalent of Lincoln Riley's thorn in his side with the defense. Like, they had a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line in 23 at Washington. So they know what they're doing there. They know what it looks like. Just a matter of it coming together, man. So that's a long way to say I think it will be at least marginally improved. How much more is a reason why it's 8.5 in the preseason, huh? In terms
God, it's low. Dude, it's
bizarre.
It is. And I think it's fair. I really do. And I think it's fair to poke holes in some of those spots, and definitely a concerted effort from that staff to try and say, hey, we're going to be really inexperienced here. Continuity is kind of like our only way with the offensive line. Can they get a Jeremy Bernard type presence in that room after he's gone? Like there are just a lot of questions surrounding this situation. And I like it's gonna probably hold me back from saying that they're capable of getting to Atlanta this year. And it's gonna feel very strange to talk about Bama in that light. But I think we just kind of have to turn the page with Bama and preseason expectations and talk about them as more of like a fringe playoff team than not. What does not making the playoff do for Kalen DeBoer if that's ultimately Bama's fate this year?
It's so tough that he got the job when he got the job, not just like post Saban, like that part of it is obvious, but the fact that he got the job when the playoff expands to 12 teams and the portal's a thing where your roster, you have to like retain it every single year. Like the expectations are still conditioned to Saban level. And then you also look at the 12-team playoff and say, well, we should have a better chance of making the playoff every year. Like Kalen DeBoer, here we go now. We should just punch our ticket to the playoff every year, right? If they don't make the playoff this year, I don't want to be the guy that says it's hot seat time for DeBoer and he's going to be, out of it. Like, I don't think anything like that is on the table if they miss the playoff, but I do think it matters a lot of how it looks if they miss the playoff. If it's 9-3 and, you had a couple of games go down to the final play and you can like truly see the growth in Alabama and it's a year one Keelan Russell, I think it's easier to talk yourself into the future of Bama football. But if it's more of the same of last year of can't run the ball, not elite stopping the run, there's not that joyless murder ball we've talked about with Bama under Saban, and that's missing. I just think at the very least it'll get uncomfortable, and there will be a lot of pressure on performing in 27.
Let me give you 4 bounce back candidates in the SEC, and you tell me which one that you think will have the best 2026. And maybe this guy's part of the conversation for Kalen DeBoer as well. But Ryan Coleman-Williams, Ryan Wingo, Lenore Sellers, Caden Durham. Which one of those guys do you feel like, all right, 2026 will be a different story than 2025?
Dude, I don't know if I can quit Lenore Sellers. You know what I mean? Like I did everything but buy the action figure last year, Connor, when it came to like buying stock and what he was just so magic in 2024. I think there was the game against Clemson where he broke like 18 tackles or something ridiculous. I towed the line in one of your evergreen rules with comparing him to Cam Newton. I said, he's not Cam Newton. There's nobody that's kind of Cam Newton. However, I get a similar emotion watching him play. Like, is that fair to say? Like, I get a similar feeling watching him of just knowing like,
allow it.
Oh, that's different. I compared him to Johnny Manziel in that light of like, I just think something good is going to happen the longer the play goes. So it doesn't count for anything relative to him being good in 26, but you do look at, hey, Kendall Briles is in there. He knows what he's doing as an offensive coordinator. The offensive line, similar to what we said about Alabama, like, can it get too much worse? I don't think so. Nicholas Harbor, another year being just a football player, probably a good thing. So like, I really don't know if I can quit Lenore Sellers. Plus there's the whole, like my gut is just that I think South Carolina plays their best ball when we expect them to do nothing, which has kind of been the trend for Beamer. It's been like, hey, we think you're going to go be a playoff team. How does 5 wins sound? Hey, we think you're going to go be an over under 5.5 team in the preseason. How does 9 wins knocking on the door with the playoff sound? So I think there's like a Gamecock bounce back here that Lenore Sellers will be a pretty big part of. That's like as simple as I could say. I can't quit Lenore Sellers, man. I don't think I can do it.
I don't think I can either. Just because
my guy.
You just don't need things to be perfect for him. And he can still, that's the part that's so enticing, is that there are certain guys that you can look at up and down and say, hey, if they have this and they have this, then you feel like they can really take that next step. And, the things that he does well are just like, man, just mediocrity around him. And you can still see the best possible version of him. And that's what's so appealing. And that's why, I'm still going to be glued to the TV whenever he's on it, of course. Why wouldn't you be?
And we've seen it before too. That's the other thing is like, if we were trying to project him still as, well, he's got this great skill set and he was X, Y, and Z as a high school recruit and maybe a new coordinator unlocks him. Like we've seen him be dynamite against good football teams, like against A&M in that run in 24, against Clemson, a team that ended up being a playoff team. There's been moments where you can literally put him up against a filter of a good defense and say, no, I think that's real. I think what you're bringing to the table translates, just for a number of reasons a year ago, some of which being he's very much responsible for, wasn't in the cards. So all that's to say, like Michael Scott says, I'm ready to get hurt again. Lenoris, I am ready to have you rip my heart out again and stomp on it. And I will smile the entire time from August until November.
Michael Scott did say that. And then, you know what? He finds the love of his life, Holly, happily ever after. It took a little bit to get there, though. Had to get through the chair lady and all that stuff. All right. Everyone has their
chair
own
lady. Deep cut. I love that.
when Michael and Dwight are singing at the end of that episode, that scene is so ridiculous. I don't know how they ever got through that of like, let's just go to a cemetery and have you guys just belting this out. God, that show just still cuts. Everyone's got their own set of expectations for Lane year one. He's, you can debate whether or not he's kind of playing into them or trying to at least quiet some of the noise that everybody's talking about with his roster, how expensive it is, all this stuff. Like, what is your realistic expectation for this LSU team? And it might not be so much a record, might not even be playoff or bust, but like, just what's a fair thing that you can say, like, hey, if they don't check this year, that won't be meeting my standard?
I just need LSU to look like LSU again. Like, didn't we watch LSU a couple of times, or a lot of the time last year, and the uniforms were the same, the logo was the same, but just like the nastiness wasn't there. They couldn't run the football, they couldn't stop the run. You didn't fear LSU when you saw them on your schedule. I need like the swagger to be back at LSU, which is a funny thing to say and pretty unquantifiable, but I don't think that's too much to ask for when you have the Portal King, 40 new players, 2 of the top 5 portal players coming from the line of scrimmage, and Seton and Uman Mielen. Like, I think there's too much there for them not to have a physical edge about themselves. And if we can check that box, other things are going to happen with the schedule and with Levitt and whoever's, catching the football for him, to where, like, do we win in the big moments, and do we do the things that good football teams do in November to get ourselves in the playoff and be a 10-win team? Like, that's all TBD. But like, the price of admission to me is just making LSU LSU-ish again, because it hurt my heart. Even though I picked A&M to win that football game in Death Valley, like, it hurt my heart watching that thing empty by the fourth quarter and just being like, what happened? Look how they murdered my boy. Like, I cannot believe we're just watching a lifeless LSU stadium at night get emptied out in the fourth quarter by Texas A&M. Texas 8-4 for a lot of people did that to them. So seeing a pulse and seeing that swagger back is the biggest thing for me.
And I haven't had a chance to apologize on air to you, but I may or may not have played a very, very small part in talking you into the LSU National Championship. It's like there's a bit of guilt that I feel, like, having known that we went down that path together, and we were all in on this idea at this time last year of LSU being the last team standing. And then, it's just a shame that it ended up the way that it did with Indiana. Like, who could have, just worst possible result. But I do feel a bit of that remorse. And if I played a part in that, just put that back on me. When anybody comes at you and your mentions like, JD, you picked LSU to win it all last year, be like, hey, Connor told me he pushed me into this. He's the one that signed me up for all this. You don't deserve all that flack.
Hey, there's a great song by the Chainsmokers, and it says, if we go down together. All right. And I feel I would do it again in a heartbeat, Connor. Like, I mean, how are we supposed to know is kind of my take on that too. Like, you got Nussmeier, who when we made our prediction, dude was going to be healthy. Yeah. Like, that was the portal class was awesome. They had a top 2 portal class. Like, knowing what we knew at that point in time, and then hearing Brian Kelly, like, the first words out of his mouth at SC Media Days was, we're here to win a national championship. I'm like, I regret nothing. I would buy that ticket again today. And golly, I mean, life's about swinging and missing, huh? But gosh dang it, we swung big, man. I'm proud to have that on our tombstone when it's all said and done.
And we whiffed big. just
whiffed big, dude.
That's all right. All right. What's more believable for you? Byron Brown leads the SEC in total offense despite his hitch, or Arch Manning gets to New York?
What's more believable? I think Arch getting to New York is kind of chalky in my mind, which I hate giving you the chalky answer, but I think it is more believable just because, like, if Texas can't figure it out this year and be in a spot to make the playoff, we got to have another conversation about not Sark in terms of his job security, but just Texas as a whole, because that would just feel like a massive whiff. And so if they're in playoff contention, you'd like to think Arch is a pretty big part of that. I'm still in on Byron Brown. I think he's going to be great for Auburn, but leading the SEC in total yardage is like a little bit rich for me. So I'll go ahead and say Arch getting to New York, man. Like there's just, it's all there for this year, isn't it? I mean, the offensive line should be there. Keyword should. Cam Coleman, the running back room. Like that was my thing a year ago. As bad as Arch looked early on, he was in a very different situation than what Quinn Ewers was the 2 years before him. Like Texas has had a 1,000-yard rusher every year with Sark there. Their leading rusher last season for Arch was like 600 yards, something crazy like that. It was nowhere in the stratosphere of what they're used to having. So Arch with more support, more Arch support. Can we get that going, NIL world? Some Arch support should relate to Arch, I think, getting to New York City. That sounds more believable to me.
I'm kind of amazed that Arch didn't do the big Arch thing with McDonald's. Like seeing that burger everywhere, and it's like, did they reach out to him at some point? I'm on record saying like I think Arch should, like, I don't necessarily tell someone how to spend their money and how they should or shouldn't market themselves, but if I were his camp, I'd be saying, just don't do anything NIL. Just don't do anything for this entire year and watch the conversation naturally change about you. And people will actually respect that more. But yeah, that's probably a different discussion for a different time. I agree with you. There's something to be said for like the chalky pick, but it does seem a little bit more likely this time around.
But the Byron Brown thing's interesting too. Where did you fall on this, Connor? Because I saw QB coach Twitter light up. Like everybody had a take on Byron Brown's motion. I'm like, this is the same guys in the 3,000, 1,000 club, right? Like I get the SEC and the AAC are very different, but as long as it's repeatable and it's accurate, I'm not overly worried about the Byron Brown motion just yet. Like I think his legs is what gets me the most excited about what the offense can be. And so the motion itself, even if that's the thing that makes you lose REM sleep at night, it's only half his game. Like I think Byron Brown's gonna be pretty good at Auburn.
Yeah, the funniest thing is that the people that are saying that are just also admitting they've never watched him play, because it's not like this is new necessarily. And that's kind of the thing with him, is that he is not a perfect player. I don't necessarily think that he should be expected to come into the SEC and put up, 4,500 total yards of offense. If that ends up happening in this scheme that he obviously has a lot of familiarity with, then we'll look back on that discussion with his hitch and we'll be like, that was the dumbest thing ever said. I still think that a certain Tim Tebow having a hitch should probably quiet the noise, at least as it relates to the college football discussion of his game. But yeah, seeing that, I was like, oh boy, this is, if he doesn't succeed, I don't think it will be related to his hitch. I think it'll be about his ability to throw on the move, which has been an issue that he struggled with throwing under pressure was more the bigger thing with him. What does it look like if he can't break all those tackles? People have already heard me say that like 3 or 4 times this offseason, but that's the bigger question I have about his game, not so much his throwing motion.
And the offense itself too, to go back to your point, it's such a complimentary offense in general. Like, obviously, Byron Brown has to deliver the mail and play at the right tempo and all those things. But I mean, Alex Golesh has said, I think in every interview I've heard of him this offseason, say we want to run the piss out of the football. So like that's the table setter. Also, your receivers coming over from USF, like they have to win in their choice routes and all those things. So I'm with you. If Byron Brown and Auburn aren't like duplicating what they did at USF a season ago under Golesh, I don't think it has anything to do with the motion. I think it probably has to do with the acclimation going from the G6 level to the SEC and all that comes with that.
Yeah. Last one for you, and this has been great, man. You had, and I say that because I'm about to push back on something that you threw out there. You had James Franklin as your number 2 most wrongfully disrespected person in college football. Yep. So tell me, how should I personally respect Franklin and his 4-26 record against AP top 10 teams? That makes my skin crawl.
100% fair point. 100% fair point. And I think the reason why he's at 2 for me is you hear things about James Franklin that almost like disqualify him as a coach at the P4 level at all. Like there was a lot of things said about James Franklin with just his time at Penn State where it was like, he's not the right guy. He's not a good coach. He's this, he's that. And like, I am more than open to the idea that he's got a real problem against top 25 teams, top 10 teams. That is 100% on the table, 100% fair. But when we go so far as to question his chops as a head coach in general, I'm like, okay, maybe he's had problems in big games, but he's also won double-digit games, it feels like, every other year. I think I heard a stat. It was if the 12-team playoff was the first iteration we went to, like we just totally bypassed the 4-team playoff. We said BCS, the 12-team playoff. think Penn State would have made the playoff like 6 different times under him, which again, we didn't go from the BCS to the 12-team playoff, so it's a moot point. But I do think it's a little bit interesting now. A guy who only won 10 games and struggled with Michigan and Ohio State the entirety of his time at Penn State. How different do we view him if he's got a bunch more playoff berths to his name, and maybe Penn State is able to get hot one of those years, they get a favorable draw a couple of those years, and maybe we look at him differently. So I don't think, I didn't have him as a top 10 coach in the sport as it stands right now. So maybe I'm part of the wrongful disrespect for James Franklin. But I think him as a head coach being questioned, just period, is a little bit intense for my liking with his public perception.
I just wish that he could be in spots where it's just kind of 4 years and out. And there should be certain coaches that you just sign up for that every single time of like, hey, you're going to come in here, you're going to do the rebuild, you're going to change the culture, and then we're just going to move on to the next guy. As soon as those expectations get high, we just kind of accept you're not necessarily going to be the guy that's going to like win us national championships. But maybe the person who succeeds you can end up doing that. He'd be awesome for that. And there would be a real market for that. Like kind of Matt Rule was being paid essentially like that at this level. And I've got some thoughts about Matt Rule, but like if that was just understood of like, hey, this is what you're going to come in here and do. And after 4 years, like you're just going to be gone. And it's almost like how consultants are treated in the business world of like, come in, fix what's not working for us. And then like, just be on your way. But like, we won't expect you to be like here for year 10. It's an entirely different discussion. The problem is that doesn't exist. And maybe his ego is a little bit too much for that to ever exist, in my opinion. But that would allow me to respect Franklin, I think, the right amount.
I mean, Florida State could have used that 4-year process for James Franklin like yesterday. Like that's a whole other discussion in itself. But I was banging the drum during the month of like October. Hey, it's not Mike Norvell. Your AD just put out a statement that they're going to revisit it at the end of the year. James Franklin, say what you want about the Ohio State, Michigan stuff and the top 10 stuff, but like there's not a whole lot of top teams not named Miami in the ACC. Like bring him in there. Let's go do some good things in the state of Florida. We'll see how it works at Va Tech. But that to me, just what you said, if you want to just get back to like a little bit past neutral in a 4-year period, I think that would have been awesome in Tallahassee. I'm ashamed for Florida State fans that didn't happen.
Yeah. He's when he's 9-3 year 1 at Virginia Tech, I will respect James Franklin. No doubt about it.
There we go.
JD, really appreciate the time, man. We'll do it again soon.
Dude, honor and a privilege. Appreciate you. I'm a little bit bummed I won't be able to listen to like the second half of the OG Kickoff now with having been on it for this episode. But actually, no, I'll still listen through, but like not having the Christmas present to open whenever I get this podcast in my feed.
It's spoiled for you already. You already know what's coming.
Yeah. Exactly. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, man. All right, well, lad of the week. We're going Masters for this, aren't we? Let's be honest. I mean, Rory repeats. Can't believe that Rory repeated. Like to be that guy forever that just was never going to go over the hump, and now to just rattle it off like that. I remember last year when he won, that was the big fear that people who didn't like Rory had, was like, oh man, did this just kind of unleash him to the world? Maybe it's a John Elway situation and Rory's going to fade off into the sunset, having won 2 Super Bowls, and he's just going to enjoy his remaining days. That John Elway doc on Netflix was really, really good. Really good. I enjoyed that. For those who watched it, things got a little bit rough for Elway, like right after retirement. Very dark place that he went to. Just a lot of different things that are being thrown at him. But yeah, it seems like everything is just coming up Rory these days. It's his world. We're just living in it. He's not a fan of Irish food, not going to serve it to anybody at the Masters because he doesn't even like it. Tough look for Irish food. Great look for Irish people.
Yeah, it's always funny, like having gone to the UK and like talking to them about like the stereotypes of their food. It's like there is good food here, guys. Like we don't, it's we're not just all eating gruel. But yeah, I think that's a very aware move, and I think he's a guy. I saw a tweet that said like Rory has won the Masters twice since the Jets have thrown a pick, which is really funny. So like I think that he's a guy.
Not throwing a pick.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. You're right. Caught a pick. Received a pick on defense after hiring a defensive backs coach as their head coach. But yes. So that being said, like he's one of those rare guys that we kind of grew up watching to a degree. Maybe we're not really grown up, but like kind of came of age, like watching him, and he's still hanging around, like still maybe playing his best time ever. And like golf is one of those like wait your turn sports because there are these people that'll just go on big runs. So yeah, really cool watching him over the weekend. It was like a little F1 bar during the final. It was cool to like keep up with that. And then quick shout out to Sam Burns, SEC legend over at LSU. Played really, really well over the weekend. Kind of lost it over the middle and Sunday, but rallied back. But again, when you're kind of paired with Rory and you kind of see that guy right in front of you, it's a little bit different than locking in and kind of doing it on your own. So golf is so interesting because it is an individual sport. And so in theory, anyone can make a run like that, but it kind of goes to show the guys that have been around for a reason. It all comes down to reps and being in those situations. So it's really cool that, you can have some amateur guys or some younger guys kind of get in the mix at the end. And ultimately, guy who's been there for kind of our whole lives takes it away.
Isn't it weird, though, that golf feels like one of the few sports, maybe I'm wrong about this, where it's actually easier to repeat than it is to get over the hump and win the first one? It depends on like how the conversations are surrounding you. But I mean, mentally speaking, it's got to be easier for Rory to think about, well, gosh, even if I mess this up, I still got my one. I still was able to get over the hump. And it's not like you have this long drawn out process of like, the grind of hearing about repeat the second you hoist the championship trophy. Whereas like some teams have obviously heard that. And in the internet age, I always talk about in college football, that's a really difficult thing to have to like take on. But it does kind of feel like, man, once you kind of move past that, and that's nobody's ever going to question the talent or anything like that. You like don't have to overcome that anymore. And I don't know how much that factors into it, or if that gives you the ability to like go for shots that you wouldn't typically. And I certainly think that Rory is like, whatever you said negatively about him is now just strictly a personal deal. I didn't like how he was like stiffing the media right after he won the Masters last time. It's kind of like, oh, now you think the media is just against you? Like, what? How did we get here, man? Like everybody was celebrating your story. Everybody's been kind of like giving you your props for being able to, do this thing in sports that's, sacred in so many ways. And yeah, Rory's an interesting dude, needless to say.
That's the Kirby Smart 7-6 mentality right there. Like, hey, nobody said we could repeat. Well, actually, plenty of people are rooting for you. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think it's such a mental game, and you kind of end up in a prison with yourself. And if you've seen it happen, it becomes a lot easier over like, the Sunday or the final day of the weekend to go, okay, I've done this. I really literally know I can do this. It is real. It's there. I've done it. Versus again, you kind of look across and it's like that guy hadn't done it. He has like 1% self-doubt. And if you have that could be enough. So yeah, no, I think it's interesting. It's like how far self-talk can get you and how long these guys have. Again, like there are people they're talking with, conversing with throughout, but it really does feel like you're just on an island out there playing corner for the Jets. And you're like, hey, if you have any of that says, what if I can't do this? It's over for you.
Well, what would be your master's meal? Just your master's entree of like thing that you would want everybody else to be able to have? Because that's kind of a trickier thing than simply what's your favorite food.
I think, and we're assuming in this world that I've won the Masters.
Yeah, you've won the Masters. You come back, you get the meal the next year.
Yes. Well, it depends on what I'm looking for. I think crawfish would be such a strong pick because it would be such a home field for me.
Yep.
And most people would not like that. I think I would go the opposite of Rory there and go, I'm going to watch you peel crawfish and really get under your skin. You're going to smell bad. You're not going to be ready. It's going to be all over your hands. But I think it would definitely be some seafood, something like that, to kind of bring that local flair.
If you had crawfish there, they would probably do all of it ahead of time. They'd take away the hard part. There's no doubt, right? Like they're not going to sit there and expect you to, not at the Masters. No way. Too many.
That would be my meal. That's why it would be such a mind bleep, because it's like, hey, no, you got to peel crawfish in front of me while I'm sitting here just looking at you.
Somebody gets hurt peeling crawfish, get a blister or something like that, and ruin the tournament for themselves. Look,
I'm walking out with Coach O, where he's sitting next to me. We're putting down crawfish. It's like this guy will never lose again. He's ready.
Yeah. I'd go Chicago tavern style pizza. I would not do deep dish pizza because deep dish pizza, I love it. It's my death row meal, but I also acknowledge why people don't like it. It is like pimento cheese. It is an acquired taste. It is now for everybody. That's perfectly fine. Chicago tavern style pizza should be for everybody. It is the type of food that if you are a human being who doesn't have some sort of like dairy intolerance, you should like Chicago tavern style pizza. And if you don't know what it is, you should look it up right now. We're talking thin crust. You've got the square slices. It's like, it's crispy on the bottom. It's not over sauce. It's got like the best ratio of cheese. It's cooked like really, really high temp, but like better than wood fired pizza, in my opinion. Like Chicago tavern style pizza needs more love. And I guarantee you, like that's a 98, 99% approval rate. I would just get the best possible Chicago tavern style pizza and just let people have those conversations and be the reason why they happened. Let's close with an email that we got. Wanted to read this. Got it from a listener named Emily. So Emily says, I grew up in Tampa, Florida in a Tennessee Vols family. I eventually went to University of Tennessee, played tuba in the marching band there for 2 years, graduated with both a bachelor's and master's degree in special education from Tennessee. I was always around football, but never very knowledgeable about football. Fast forward to 2022, gave birth to my first child. I now know that she has sensory processing issues, but back then I only knew that she screamed all the time. One of the few things that got her to stop screaming was being in the car with the car moving. I also had postpartum depression, which meant that I struggled with playing music in the car because it made me cry. The podcasts I previously had been listening to about parenting and Christianity and teaching were also awful for me at that point because they were all telling me things that I needed to be doing that I wasn't already doing, which did not help me while I was trying to keep my head above water. This is the point where I found your podcast. I really appreciated the analysis that you provided because it allowed me to actually learn about football instead of strictly listening to football opinions. Additionally, I am not a football player or on staff at any university, which means that no part of listening to a football podcast was telling me something to do. With the amount of time I spent in the car with my daughter, my Spotify Wrapped that year had me in the top 2% of podcast listeners. All that to say, thank you. Your podcast greatly helped me at a time when I had no idea that I needed a sports podcast. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. That's the type of stuff that keeps us going. And we love hearing that. We really do. And, you know, I know that everybody is at a different point in their lives, and you all have different issues. And I have always wanted to just be an escape. And so if you've ever wondered, like, oh, why don't we get into like hard button issues or something like that, it's because like this is what we do. And this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and provide laughs. And it's not to say that it's just all about football, but I do love being able to come do that at this platform because there's a lot of crazy going on in the world and crazy that we have in our own lives that's even unrelated to that. So thank you, Emily, for sending your kind words. Absolutely made my day to be able to read that email. Loved it.
Same here. I immediately forwarded that kind of around like, or just to like Connor, because obviously the email comes like to me and I'm like, hey, this is why we do what we do. You know, that is such a like poignant, beautiful email. And it kind of goes to show that like our little silly thing that we have fun with can be so impactful to so many people. And, you know, I can definitely relate to that where things are hard, you don't want to like listen to more intense stuff or more like planning type of stuff. Sometimes it's just great to throw on, you know, Will Ogburn drafted Cam Coleman 1-1 and be like, wow, if this clown could be on an SEC podcast, I can do anything. No, just kidding. So yeah, that's actually genuinely like warmed my heart. I love it when people give us stories like these because it really makes it feel like what we do matters. And again, like, you know, we're not firefighters, we're not, you know, policemen and military folks. We are just trying to do some college football, and talk some ball and, you know, hang out with our boys. So it's really, really cool. We can be an escape, and I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate that.
Definitely. And yeah, while we don't wish time away in this life, if we can make the off season a little bit more entertaining for you, then we'll have done our job successfully. All right, we are doing something very fun for Just Men More later in the week. Certain former host of this show, certain guy who maybe lives and bleeds crimson in ways that you would expect people to live and bleed crimson. Yeah, we're gonna have Marler on the show because we're gonna do 2011, a certain game of the century. Maybe a touchdown was scored, maybe it wasn't. Maybe Will's gonna have some thoughts on the things that followed. Maybe he won't. He will. But we will have a lot of fun with that. So that is the plan, is to be able to drop that on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. If you have not, please leave us a 5-star review. Email us, theogkickoff@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, @CJOguerra, @GoSoHard. The next round on YouTube, that's where you can catch all these episodes. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.